So it's great to have Danny and Michelle on our latest episode of Local Links. Really looking forward to talking to you about what's happening in your local area as part of this series. As with all of our other Local Links episodes, we have some local treats to enjoy after we talk. So these ones were tricky because Danny, you're northwest, Manchester, Great Merseyside, whole areas there. So we've got some Chorley biscuits, which I didn't know were a thing.
Perfect.
That's my attempt at those. And then even more challenging was Oxfordshire, Buckinghamshire, Hertfordshire. But I did find a nice recipe on Blenheim Palace's website. So I thought it's kind of the area. So that's my take on Blenheim cookies, apparently. So
that'll tempt us over there.
So we can enjoy those later. And as we always say, similarities in the baked treats and similarities in things that are happening in your areas. But equally, some differences. Danny, kind of quite an urban area, major cities. Michelle, kind of a little bit more rural, less kind of metropolitan, although you have got some city bases in there. So if we can start off, just confirm what your areas are that you cover and what's happening and kind of the makeup of the sector there.
So mine's Greater Manchester, Merseyside and Lancashire, as you've said, and very busy areas with loads going on, lots of work, not just from exercise and fitness, but obviously performance sport as well, because we've got lots of the big clubs there too. So I'd say, that's very much my sort of makeup.
So you mentioned a few, so Berkshire, Buckinghamshire, Hertfordshire and Oxfordshire. Like you said, rural areas, but also quite key kind of cities with kind of Oxford City, but also very kind of diverse areas. So you kind of got that rural base, but then you've also on the other side, you've got that city life and there's kind of low kind of deprivation, socio-economical issues and things like that. So and also bordering London as well. So cost of living and trying to recruit locally, but being in that border to London is quite challenging for people in my areas.
And it is the kind of those kind of similar challenges, which, although kind of every area is unique, there is some commonality, but it is so important there is that local approach. I mean, your areas then include Greater Manchester, which is kind of, I guess, regionally, with the Metro mayors and the combined authorities, one of the real trailblazers of local skills and the work that Andy Burnham's doing up there. We've just kind of seen some more announcements around Skills England. What's kind of going on in Greater Manchester, but across kind of your areas in the northwest around kind of this real local approach to skills provision?
Yeah, there's a real sort of move towards basically technical education as well, so moving maybe from the traditional way of moving through education to more of a technical approach, so more of an apprenticeship approach, and I think that'll be really interesting for our industry, because especially the great thing about my job is that we obviously speak to employers a lot, but we also go to events where we hear student voices a lot, and we get insight from both sides, so it's a real interesting insight from skills and sometimes how the students might be struggling in the current traditional approach of education, and I think it's something different is probably needed, and I think it'll be really interesting to see how that works and how it benefits us in our sector will be new and different, because obviously with me and obviously more of an apprenticeship approach and more of a technical base to the education process, I think our SMEs can struggle sometimes with an apprenticeship approach, because obviously if they're smaller organisations, they've got less of a workforce to bring apprentices in sometimes. So I think it's how we support them and offer support there. So but I'm really interested to see something different, I think, in an approach. It'll be exciting to see.
Most definitely. And in your areas, Michelle, there's some great work that we've been doing in partnership with some of the colleges in that area, around sort of indoors qualifications and mapping to professional standards. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. So Oxfordshire have just launched a pilot kind of project within the SIMSPA professional qualification. So the kind of story behind that was we done the workforce skills diagnostics, and the top roles to come out of that was lifeguard, swimming teacher, Group X instructor and sports coach. So we've kind of taken that kind of operational role data and then looked at actually how could we better prepare the students coming through to then go into the workforce straight away. So the model is 3 days a week they're in college, and then 2 days and/or they can do Thursday and/or Friday, where they're with their work placement. And we've had great kind of response from the employers in the local area to kind of come on board with that. So they're in their induction phase at the moment, the students, so very kind of early days, but definitely kind of taking learnings from that pilot, and then hopefully kind of, I guess, broad it out. So Activate Learning have got sites in Berkshire and Surrey as well, so we're hoping to kind of, again, to branch out with that course, all going well.
Yeah, brilliant. You draw on that kind of that data there, and we've talked about in other local links videos the importance of data. What is it kind of telling us in your areas, and what is it telling employers in the areas about kind of the workforce and employer needs, and how education providers, but more broadly, people can respond to that?
Yeah, I think what's insightful for us at the moment in the data we have is we know where our workforce is spread, and it's sometimes not what we've originally thought. And I think what's interesting for mine is a number of organisations, both in Greater Manchester, Merseyside and Lancashire, are very exercise and fitness heavy. There's a real, in terms of employee numbers, Greater Manchester has a real sort of health and wellbeing area of work. We've got lots of employees in that area. But actually, performance sport-wise, in all three of my areas is huge. And Greater Manchester's got more in performance sport than Merseyside and Lancashire together. So even that, is heavy in terms of what we've thought our workforce always is. I think sometimes we can approach our workforce and think it's very practical delivery, can't we? But actually, when you sit back and look at the data, there's data analysts in there, there's all kinds of things that are, roles in our sector that our data's uncovering. So I think it's really insightful to see that it's not always what you think,
Yeah, and I think for me, something that's come out is those kind of entry-level roles, so your team leader, your duty manager, those operational roles. I think we could kind of guess that a lot of lifeguards, swimming teachers, just from kind of what we've heard over the years, but actually that kind of piecing it together, them being able to progress. And the specific issue that we have specifically kind of in Hertfordshire is where it borders London. The kind of living wage is £12, but the London living wage is £13.15. So you're kind of, they're fighting with borders of Barnet, Enfield, local London boroughs, and actually to kind of have someone on a higher salary, but if it kind of is only two grand, but then you have all the extra responsibility of line management, rotas, and kind of payroll and things like that. So it's just that, and like kind of actually it's great getting the operational workforce in, but we do need to think about that next step and how we progress those ones that kind of come in at operational roles, whether it is through apprenticeships, whether it's through training. But that's definitely something that's kind of an issue just with my areas bordering London.
Yeah. It's part of kind of things we do in the training academy and the micro-credentialing course. We're trying to kind of support that pipeline of people moving into management and leadership roles, and really on a broader sense supporting people to build careers in the sector. And there are some great opportunities. Danny, you kind of linked me up with Mark, and we'll be featured on the podcast soon. Really around kind of what they're doing in terms of, they do work with young people, and then so many of those young people are going on into to roles within the sector, which is really inspiring. What are the kind of innovative works taking place across your areas?
There's lots of there's pockets of work in all of my areas, which is really interesting to see, from crime reduction to actually, obviously the health connection that we're looking at the moment. I think standout work that I've spotted is obviously Dream Big Sports. They've got social value report that's really insightful, and that's very localised, which is great about lots of the community sports organisations I look after, and that are employer partners of ours. It's lovely to see some of their actual work they do very concentrated to their communities, and the benefit they're making localised. That's really interesting. We've obviously got the bigger projects like Prehab for Cancer, in Greater Manchester. And that's also really wonderful to see some of that work coming through. So it's really great to see really big projects, but really localised, really into very intricate areas. It's insightful to see.
Yeah, I think health across the board, that kind of connecting the dots between the health sector and the physical activity sector. So for me specifically, in the areas that I work in, there's an ageing population, and I think Buckinghamshire has quite a high, probably one of the highest kind of ageing workforce, and we're looking at using physical activity within kind of older adults. So one, I guess, as a kind of a rehab type thing, but then also to help them kind of keep active using physical activity. So a new project that we're looking at in Hertfordshire, very kind of early days, but using judo within older adults and safer falling. There's research that says kind of people that fall are one, scared to fall again and scared to go out and social and kind of all that mobility, and actually them having confidence to one, prevent that, but then if it has happened, then how we can kind of get people back up on their feet. And that's come from the board in Hertfordshire coming together, and local projects that have been working together as well, but a really innovative way to look at, okay, this is a kind of health issue that we have, how can we use physical activity to combat that? So I think that, it's incredible, just a few people coming together and kind of so simple, but actually so effective in kind of these conversations that we're starting to have, which I'm sure more and more will come out.
And that's so the beauty of the local approach. You can look at those local priorities, whether it's around health, whether it's around social cohesion, whether it's around crime and other issues. And from getting all those people around the table that you were getting around the table at those local skills accountability boards, brings a joint solution with kind of the sector at the heart of it. On local skills accountability boards, just talk to us a little bit about your boards, the kind of organisations and representation that you've got there, and kind of what's happening at the moment.
So I'd say I follow almost a very strict template in a way, in that I make sure everyone's sort of covered within the sector as much as possible, so make sure we've got a representative from each area. And then obviously what we're missing, then we look for to make sure there's a real fair representation, and that's the same on all three of my boards. And obviously then as you create your boards, obviously other people are aware of others that can then be added that I might be missing. So it's really important for me and the board members to make sure that we're covering all parts of the sector. I'd say sometimes the toughest part of the boards and their makeup is sometimes the smaller organisations, because obviously if somebody's only a couple of people within an organisation, it's actually difficult for them to attend a board and actually miss work for that day and lose money. So we find other ways to try and help support that, whether it's we keep them updated with information that's going on, or ask them questions separately if that's the needed. I'd say that's the general makeup of the boards. But they do tweak a little bit, because we have people that might not be your stereotypical person on, in the sport and physical activity sector, but they actually might be really knowledgeable in an area completely different, but bring lots, a diversity lead or, those kind of things. So, it's really kind of important to have a range, isn't it?
Yeah, and same as Danny there. I think something that's worked really well in Oxfordshire is just the kind of the speed that we've kind of the momentum that we've got, and that's purely from the people that are on the board. And in between the meetings, we have what we call subgroups, or task and finish groups, as people might know them as. And actually that people kind of committing to that as well has really helped move it forward. So in between the meetings, kind of picking up the actions and the follow-ups and updates, and then the board becomes that strategic level of where we kind of, everything, that kind of top level piece. And I think that's worked really well. And I think the commitment from people to input into that is incredible. Like you said, you get some organisations smaller, some larger. And what we've said on those kind of subgroups is, if you've got a kind of EDI lead, a health lead, or somebody that isn't on the board but can feed into that role or feed into that kind of topic of conversation, and then that kind of gets fed back through the board. So I think utilising not only that kind of person but also people within that organisation as well is really key, because obviously they've got key people in that organisation for a reason. So
So we talked a little bit about careers earlier, and I always say it, can't have you two here or any of our skills team here without asking for some top tips for you for somebody who's either looking to start out a career in the sector or looking to progress their career. Top tip from each of you for them.
Top tip from me is, if you're starting out in a career, the beauty of our sector is there's so many short placements as well that you can jump into. We've got summer activity camps, with lots of range of sports in, so you can go along. work on the practical side of your coaching skills and your communication skills. I think that's a great way to meet lots of different people and you know, your group communication skills. Cool, I could name a good few. I'll probably stick with one, but yeah, there's I think the beauty of it at first in our sector is there's so much range. Try everything, see what sticks and what you enjoy.
Yeah, I think on the back of that, just go for it. And you kind of have this thing as a younger kind of person going into work and thinking, I must do this, or this is what I want to do. You get asked all the time, what do you want to be? It's okay not to know. We probably all still don't. We still don't know. And I think the great thing about our sector is you can kind of go into lifeguard, go into coaching, go into teaching. If that's not for you, it's not for you. You can try something else, and there'll always be something else within that kind of sector, even if it's like we mentioned earlier around marketing, content creation, journalism, like data analytics, and there's so much out there. So don't feel like, oh, that's not for me, and kind of think, oh, but you don't have to. I mean, I've tried so many different jobs in kind of the years that I've been working, and actually all that experience has helped me. So picking up those transferable skills and starting off as a lifeguard and a gym instructor and a swimming teacher, actually that communication skills, interpersonal skills, all is transferable. You can take it with you into any job. And I was reading our workforce data insight report from December, and actually the top skill was communication skills and customer service. So all of that, any job that you go into that's a front-facing role is key to take into kind of any job within the sector.
Most definitely. Well, we're really looking forward, because I know you both kind of have got local skills plans coming in the very near future. So we'll be chatting to you again about those. But thanks very much for your time today, and it's great to hear what's going on in, say, two different areas, but clearly some similarities, and the work you guys are doing out there with employers is fantastic. So thanks for your time, and we'll have some biscuits.
Yeah.
Thank you.